Hello and welcome back to Plot Mom. Here with me today are the amazing E-Sans and C.R. Malley. We are going to be talking all about NaNoWriMo Prep. The best time of the year, right? Everyone's excited, writing like fiends.
Good time. Yes. Most exciting.
So, guys, if you've been to this channel before, you probably know who these people are. But if you haven't, let's introduce ourselves. So, I'm Allegra Pescatore. I'm the author of Where Shadows Lie and NaCl Eye of the Storm. I've been writing for many, many, many years and have been nanoing for almost as long. Erica?
I'm the resident chaos lady / lord / who knows because chaos. I helped Allegra write NaCl Eye of the Storm, and I write way too many words to actually count. So,
yes, and Chance.
Hi, I am Chance, or CRO Malley, and I'm a writer and online content creator. I run my own website where I publish my works in progress.
Well, we are all here to talk about Nano Prep because we are either veterans of NaNoWriMo or, in the case of Miss Erica, just capable of writing like 100,000 words a month without blinking. Erica and I may have gotten a very, very nasty competition about who could write the more words last fall or the fall before that. I can't remember. How long have we been writing together?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay. Anyways, we love words, and we are going to be discussing a little bit about NaNoWriMo and how to make the most of October. But before we get to that, Chance, do you want to tell us a little bit about what NaNoWriMo is?
Absolutely, I'd love to. NaNoWriMo stands for National Novel Writing Month. The challenge is to write 50,000 words in the month of November. It's a fast-paced write-a-thon meant to push the writer to create without overthinking their work.
Yep. If you break it down, it's a little bit over 1,600 words a day. We will go into how to get those word counts and how to prep for all of that. But most people who do NaNoWriMo spend the month of October kind of informally preparing for NaNoWriMo. Now, the rules state that you can't write anything before November 1st. And we're going to maintain those rules. However, from this point on, and with anything we say, rule number one is if it gets you writing, it's correct. So if the thing that gets you writing is writing before November and being a rebel, right. If the thing that gets you writing is a word count goal of 30,000 instead of 50,000, that's your goal. Anything that will get you writing more words than you would have written anyway is good. So take everything we say with a hearty dousing of salt, which is mine and Erica's area of expertise.
It's like you wrote a whole book about it.
It's almost like we wrote a whole book about salt in about the time that NaNoWriMo goes, just in September instead of November because we were rebels. Anyhow, before we get into prep, let's talk about NaNoWriMo and the fact that it is a fast drafting workshop. Now, Erica and I are both fast drafters. We like getting our books out as quickly as possible and then fix them afterwards. But Erica, do you want to tell us a little bit about the pros and cons of fast drafting? Because there are as many cons as there are pros.
Yes, so fast drafting is actually entirely what I do, and therefore I'm very comfortable with it. But when we say there are as many cons as there are pros, we are quite serious. So a pro, you may actually finish the damn thing.
Huge pro.
Which, that's a huge pro, because a lot of people will space things out and they'll think about every word they're putting down on their first draft and they'll overthink it and then they'll get disheartened and they'll stop 50, 75. I've seen 90% of the way through and they just cannot bring themselves to finish it. So fast drafting really does not let you do that. It's easier to keep a consistent vision from start to finish because you're word vomiting and you're getting it all out while it's fresh in your head. And by word vomiting, I mean that quite literally.
Yes, she does. I've seen
your sentences may not make much sense to anybody else in your first draft.
quite ugly, possibly smelly.
Yeah. Showering may be dropped. Less time equals less attachment, which is fantastic for a fast draft because it means, okay, you knew you were word vomiting, you know it's ugly. So if you have to cut things or completely change them when you go to do your edits, it's not a big deal. You didn't spend 30 hours crafting that beautiful paragraph.
You spend 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
If that.
Wildly typing.
You're able to freely experiment. You can go, oh my gosh, I have this great idea. I'm just going to write it down. It'll work. It may not work, but you get to play with it when you do your first draft and everything's great. You can create your own momentum. The only clock there is yours. If you want to write 2,000 words that day or 15,000 words that day, feel free. The whole point is go as fast as your little brain will let you go. That being said, I highly suggest remembering to set an alarm for bathroom breaks and water.
Yeah, you want to hydrate really a lot. It's very easy to get lost in words and just forget that you're a human body and your flesh suit needs things.
Yes.
Phone alarms are great.
Phone alarms are fantastic. I highly recommend, if you're really in the zone, set an alarm for every 3 hours. You learn to turn off your inner editor.
Sorry.
You absolutely need to turn off your inner editor if you're doing fast drafting.
Yes, I like to imagine actually sending my inner editor on a beautiful tropical vacation. I'm just like, you go over there, have a pina colada, relax by the pool, stay the fuck out of my life until I'm done with this.
Put on headphones.
Leave. Yes. Here's a great, professionally edited novel. Entertain yourself. I'm over here doing work. Then, when it comes back nice and rested, we'll talk about what happens after Nano. But while you're fast drafting, make it go away. To the point where I actually encourage people to write in a font the same color as your background. So you literally cannot see what you have written so that you cannot go back and edit it.
Unless, of course, you're like me and that drives you nuts. Which it does. So, cons. There are a few. So, a big con for fast drafting. I would say probably the biggest con to drive Allegra up the wall is that it requires a whole lot of effort to rework your draft.
Yes. Yes, it does. All those things that you thought were so great when you're drafting, you come back to it a month later and you're just like, what? Why did I do this? What? How can I think fast drafting is a good idea? Oh, what was me?
Second con kind of ties into that one. Will probably be absolute shit. Like, period, full stop. You'll have some rough diamonds in there, and we mean really rough. That's fine. That's the point. You're going to have a whole lot of plot holes. You're going to have consistency errors. Again, that's fine. You're word vomiting all over your screen. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just means you're going to have work to do. Sleep. Sleep is a problem. Sleep is very much a problem. If you're fast drafting and you are really in the zone, it is very easy to forget that you have work you're supposed to be at 8 in the morning and, oh my God, it's 4. What am I doing?
Also again, very true.
Coffee. Highly recommend coffee. I consider this a pro and a con, but it's a pro in that really nasty kind of way. You are going to get to know exactly how bad of a rough draft writer you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
There's going to be a whole lot of self-introspection when you are a fast drafter.
Yep.
Because it's just unavoidable. And depth is really hard to achieve when you are word vomiting. Don't worry about it. You can add depth later because you'll have your skeleton to play with. But if you're someone that's really focused on trying to make sure you get the depth in there on first draft, fast drafting is going to be hard for
It's
you.
very easy to get raw, like very intense emotion during fast draft, but it's very hard to carry a cognizant and deep theme. It's hard to have those like recurring elements that keep coming back, really beautifully balanced. Those things are difficult when fast drafting because you just don't have the time to introspect often. But again, that is okay. This is why it's a method that doesn't work for everyone, although it is a method that I think everyone should try at least once. And to further that, we're going to talk a little bit about how to achieve it, how to get ready for NaNoWriMo, whether this is your first time or your 10th time. I've been doing this for a very long time, and my process has absolutely evolved since at the very beginning. But there are some bits and pieces that have been there since the first NaNoWriMo I did, which was the first NaNoWriMo I won. I think I was in high school. It was long time ago. But so first things first, having a plan does help. And Erica's going to fight me on this.
I am.
But having a plan for NaNoWriMo does help, and that's why we're doing this video. It's about how to spend October planning for November. So first and foremost, I want to talk a little bit about the things, in my opinion, that are a recipe for success for NaNoWriMo. So again, this is just my view on this. You have to find your own. As I said, if something doesn't work for you, throw it out the window. But for me, the absolute core elements are a story you don't have a strong emotional attachment to, but that you are passionate about. This means something that you desperately want to write, but that you have not been thinking about for 10 plus years.
Luck with that?
Difficult.
Yes. Finding something that excites you, that gets you motivated to write every morning, but is not something that you are emotionally attached to being good, is the key part, because it won't be. It will be garbage. And if your criteria of success is that this should be good, then you will get disheartened very quickly. All right, second piece of advice, a story with a single major plot line and max 2 subplots. Having a straightforward story that you can follow along and that has internal momentum will get you there so much faster. Eric and I are actually very, like, that is probably the core of our fast drafting process. Our stories, there is a goal and the characters have to get from point A to point B. Yes, there is some meandering along the way, but primarily it is a straightforward plot.
I don't know what you're talking about.
And that is how we draft as fast as we do. My big epic fantasy books, I cannot fast draft. There are so many subplots and so much intrigue in there that it is simply impossible for me to write at the speed that I write some of my other books. All right, point 3, a story with a maximum of 3 POVs per author, I should say. All right, the fewer POVs you have in a Nano story, the deeper dive you can go into those people, the fewer characters you need to build, and the more world building fudging you can get, because a person's viewpoint of the world will determine their narration. And if you have 10 characters all vying for attention, they're all going to see different things of the world, which means you have to build 10 people's point of view of their setting. That takes time and effort, and that's that depth that's very hard to achieve with fast drafting. So keep it simple, stupid. That's just the rule overall for Nano. Next piece, a character-driven story. If you don't know what a character-driven story is versus a plot-driven story, we did a video on mice. It is on my channel. But when I say character-driven story, I mean the character wants something, and they will go for it as fast as they can, as passionately as you are writing. And that makes so much internal momentum. It means that they are not reactive, but they are active protagonists, and you will be able to fast draft so much faster like that. And finally, my final piece of advice is write in a genre you are familiar with. Ideally, even in a world you're familiar with. If this is your very, 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 very first NaNoWriMo ever, your very first attempt at fast drafting, make sure you're writing somewhere familiar. If you're doing real world, base it in the city you live in. If you're doing it in fantasy, pick the type of fantasy that you're most familiar with and base it in there. Don't try something super, super crazy right out of the box, because you are setting yourself up for a lot of world building. And that is the antithesis of fast drafting. Chance, do you have some suggestions of your own?
Yeah. So I definitely suggest the same. Go for really max 3. It doesn't, going past 3 is not a good idea, and I try to stick to 2 or less. Sorry, just a moment.
We had notes, but they're kind of scattered because we're kind of scattered because it's a month until NaNoWriMo, and oh dear God.
It is one of those days.
Right. Yeah, it's, you want to keep the story simple. You want to keep the characters fairly simple. You don't want to like try and deep dive into their backstory or anything. Just kind of bullet points who they are and that kind of thing. And try not to get bogged down in the details. That is one of the biggest things that often causes people to not reach their goal. Is, okay, well, I have to get these details. I have to have everything described. Don't do it. I promise it won't work.
It really won't. When we were writing NaCl, Eye of the Storm, Eric and I started out with a world where all we knew was that there was a giant freaking mountain of salt in the middle of the ocean that was the only source of salt, and a corporation owned it. And there were pirates.
Yeah.
That was just all we knew.
And we knew 2 characters.
Yes.
And those 2 characters evolved into what? 6, and then we cut it down to 5 main POVs by the time.
No, we still have 6. We had 7 at one point.
Right. Sorry. My bad. I was one short.
You were. No, but we had a very, very limited world building, and to this day, we don't know a lot of what's going on beyond the scope of these characters. They get isolated from society very early in the novel, so we decided just not to world build it out beyond what we needed for internal consistency.
Which leaves us to open for later.
Yes, and it leaves us open to having to do some very careful work so that we don't like contradict ourselves. But absolutely, what Chan said, getting bogged down in those details means world building way past the scope of the story you're telling. You only need the world building that your characters will come into contact with or that shape them as people. While it is like the Ernest Hemingway idea of having way more like the tip of the iceberg where you only know a tiny piece of your character's backstory, is valid to a certain extent, but is kind of an antithesis to fast drafting. Not to writing, not to revision, not to what the story will become later, but to the process of fast drafting itself. Sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, you're good. You're going to be pulling out the cork board.
Yeah, I mean, I always am pulling out the cork board. But anyways, Chance, you were...
Yeah, I think that you covered a lot of the things that I do for successful getting through NaNoWriMo, trying to set up the simplest story with the simplest characters that, you know, maybe you thought of these characters. Maybe you saw someone who inspired a character idea at some point.
Actually, one of our audience commented that I do more fast drafting than not. I like both. Helps when I get stuck on a main project. This is huge. Fast drafting is a great way to just break yourself out of a rut, especially if you're slow drafting on something else. I love when I can just break out of my, I wrote 2,000 words today. This is a great day. Usually I've been writing 200 words. And then I turn to another project and I'm like, okay, well, we did 10,000 words today. What happened? Okay, we're good.
Headcanon pages, guys. As an aside, if you found yourself in a rut or you have writer's block on this scene that you're working on, Pick your favorite characters from your project and write a headcanon scene that no one's ever going to read unless you decide to be an ass.
Write your own
and
name.
throw it at them. Write your own fan fiction, yes.
It's great. Okay, so we are going to actually turn. I'm not going to ask Erica's best tips on prepping for NaNoWriMo.
I have great tips.
You have great, Erica. What are your tips on planning for a novel?
It's very simple. Step 1, get coffee. Step 2, pick my genre. Step 3, pick my concept. I don't mean like I'm going to write an apocalyptic genre with zombies. That's not what I mean by concept. I mean nail down your character concept for your genre. What genre of world are we in? What is the character concept I'm working with? Then word bomb it.
For 50,000 words. And then sleep, finally.
Coffee. Coffee is super important.
Coffee is super important. So we're going to go into kind of my version of kind of more nitty-gritty prep. So I want to talk a little bit about why character-driven stories work well for Nano. This is something I believe very, very strongly. I'm not saying that a plot-driven story cannot work for Nano. A plot would be my second pick as far as best pick for fast drafting. As soon as you get into an intrigue, a mystery, something like that to solve, as soon as you get into a milieu-heavy, setting-heavy, world-building-heavy story, the prep you need to do and the outside of the writing work you need to do increases exponentially. Now, these stories can be very deep, can be very insightful, can be very good, and can be done by an experienced fast drafter. If, however, this is your first attempt at it, pick a character-driven story. You're going to do yourself a favor. So what do I mean about when I say character-driven story? So this is a story where the characters' desires, fears, the conflicts drive the plot. And as I kind of said before, you want a character that is proactive instead of reactive. While reactive characters are perfectly valid in fiction, they tend to be drug along by the story kicking and screaming, which means you as a writer have to do a whole lot more work to make situations that will drag them out of their houses kicking and screaming. Whereas proactive characters march out of their houses grabbing their like cleavers and saying, "Where are the goblins? I'm coming to get you."
There are a lot of D&D references that are going to pop out today. I warn you now.
Definitely. We have D&D on the mind. I just was in my podcast last night and we were building silly, crazy characters. So yes, D&D is on the mind. But now that you have your proactive character who wants something, can we think of some good examples, some really good proactive characters in fiction?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, you guys think about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about Cat. Yes. Well, yes. She is proactive at the beginning and reactive at the end. She is proactive in wanting to save her sister and then reactive from that moment on. But yes.
Until you get to the later sections, yeah.
I would call... Oh, God, I had one, and then it just slipped my mind. It's going to be one of those nights, folks.
You did it first, huh?
Yes, I did. I beat you to the punchline. We have a whole bunch of spoonies trying to run a podcast. This is not going to end well. So... Anyways, a character that wants something, because as soon as a character wants something, you as an author have a very simple job for 50,000 words. Don't let them have it. They want the cake, as in Portal. They cannot have the cake until they go through all of the game, like all of the puzzles. It's super simple writing.
You should not give them the cake till word 49,000. The last 1,000 words can
They can
be celebrating.
Yeah, they could be stuffing cake in their mouth and pouring icing all over themselves and maybe getting frisky with the cake. We don't know what kind of story you're writing, and we are not judging. But in general, you're writing a romance, don't let them have the happily ever after until the end. Keep them from getting the happily ever after all the way through. You're writing a survival story, all the character wants is to live. Well, make it very unclear whether they're going to live until the very last moment. Anything that any character-driven story where the character desperately wants something, all you have to do is, for 50,000 words, deny it. And also, a couple more advantages of writing character-driven stories. One, you will only see the world through the character. Even better if you're in first person. That's super easy. But even in third person, you will you as a writer should focus your attention on the things that characters notice and pay attention to, and therefore your world building doesn't have to be as huge as it could be. And then, of course, you have the simple fact that we all have an experience of being a person. And you cannot underestimate that we can write what we know in character-driven stories. We can pull from our own wealth of experience and emotions. If it's a plot-driven story, we may not know how to, perform a heist on a train. But we know what it feels like to feel heartbreak.
You will get good at Google Foo. We promise.
Yeah, just keep a tab with Google open, and then when the FBI comes and looks at your browser history, you just have to be like, no, I wasn't murdering anyone. I was a writer. Don't mind the 30 pages of questions about, in Erica's case, can you dispose of a body by chopping it up into little pieces and feeding it to pigs?
The answer is yes.
I mean, the answer is yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
I'm a writer. It's fine.
We're okay, really. We're sure we're okay.
Having this knowledge is normal.
All right. So,
delete my browser history if I die.
So, in short, create an active, not reactive character. Figure out what they want more than everything else in the world and what they need, because those are not necessarily the same things. And having that very clear in your mind. From then on, the entire novel is them attempting to get it, taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You'd be amazed at how many books can basically just boil down to that. Obviously, you don't want to get repetitive, but you know what? This novel is going to be horrible, and you're only going to spend 30 days writing it. So is it okay if you get repetitive? Yes, it is. Is it okay if it's formulaic? Yes, it is. By the end, you'll have written a novel. You'll be 50,000 words better as a writer, and you will have the knowledge that you have completed something. After you do that once, it becomes so much easier to do it again. It is amazing how much each novel predicts how fast and well you will write the next. So once you have your character, again, I'm going to encourage you to reference the mice video that we made, because there is a process of opening up a novel and closing down a novel to introduce the milieu, the ideas, the characters, and the plot, but I won't go into that in detail now. What I would suggest, and you guys can jump in however you want, is 25 chapters of 2,000 words exactly. This seems really arbitrary and weird, especially since it is a 1,600 word a day challenge. But I found that by deciding that for 25 days, I will write 2,000 words, and it's going to be an entire chapter, and it will have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It teaches you the skills of writing, a beginning, and a middle, and an end. So by the time you've done it 25 times, guess what? You'll have done it in the novel. You will have picked up this rhythm of writing, this 3-act structure again and again and again, and it will carry you all the way through. The other thing is it gives you 5 whole free days.
Very important.
That means that you get to be sick one day and you get to eat Thanksgiving dinner without worrying about your word count.
And if
November
you're
is
like
tough.
me or Allegra or Chance and you have a day where you knock out 10 to 20,000 words, huzzah, more free days.
Exactly. But I know it seems silly. I know it seems very, very rigid and arbitrary. For NaNoWriMo, for 30 days, again, if it works for you, try it. 25 chapters, 2,000 words. And before I go into how to hype yourself up for those words, what about you, Chance, and you, Erica? What is your philosophy on plot maps, if you even make them?
I don't really make a plot map. I am gonna follow the mice method this year though, because I found that to be interesting, and I think it'll be helpful for organizing it all, because I'm not good at that. Working on it. But I also try to set myself a word goal. 2,000 words a day is a pretty consistent one that I've done the years that I have done this. It doesn't always get me to my end goal. Some years are more hectic than others, and that's understandable. But 2,000 words in a chapter is good, and if you can write that in the day, then that's perfect. It'll keep you going, and also like I said, you've got those 5 leeway days. Like you could just, if you wanted, you could take one day off a week. That could be a thing that you could schedule. That's perfect. And then you have, okay, I have to work, but I have this day. I can get to this day. And it's very encouraging to have that end goal.
It is.
So
what about you, Erica?
I don't do plot maps in the way other people do plot maps. I just don't. Allegra's the one who controls my plot mapping, or I wouldn't have any. So typically my plot maps are more like circular brain maps. We have character here, we have character here. I might reference the one thing I organize well, which is my character design map. And maybe I'll have a block under each of them that says what conflict they have. And that's it. Then I word vomit.
So,
and that's better than when she first found me.
It is! You have done so much!
I am not an organized writer, guys. I just word vomit and then I clean it.
Yes. Okay, so I mentioned 25 chapters. I'm going to break it down how I break it down. The first 4 chapters, open one of each of my mice elements. I'll open the setting, I'll open the intrigue, I'll open the plot, I'll open the characters. Then I launch right into whatever incident pulls them into the middle of the novel. This is usually leaving the comfortable place at the beginning of the novel. They're going on the adventure. They're going off to Hogwarts. Whatever. Sorry, I have to stop making Harry Potter jokes. J.K. Rowling is dead. So we're going to be doing a list about burying the authors we love.
They're going to Night Academy. How's that? Is that better?
Yes. Absolutely. All right. So we have 4 chapters, and then whatever incident draws them out of the comfortable beginning of the novel. And then at the end, we have 4 chapters that close it down. These are the basically the climax begins, and then the character plot ends, the plot ends, the setting plot ends, the intrigue plot ends. Again, watch the mice video, will make way more sense in context. Everything in between those chapters, and that's about 10, 12 chapters in the middle, I break it to try-fail cycles. So there's a little bit of plot continuity. So maybe I'll group them into groups of 2 or 3. And it is a major try-fail cycle where they attempt something. What the character desperately wants is taken from their grasp, but they get some tool they will need to get it in the end. In a romance, that might be they have a really lovely date, but then offend each other. Or they learn something really important about each other, but at the expense of forgetting to make it on time to this, important whatever. It does it not matter. It's the same exact structure no matter the genre you're telling, if you're telling a character-driven story. And then this is where I have to thank the amazing Rachel Aaron, who is an indie fantasy writer who wrote the book 2K to 10K about how she really increased her daily word count. And it's a brilliant book. I absolutely recommend reading it. But the things that I pulled out of it that really fixed in my mind and helped me produce way more words was, for each scene, figure out 3 things. 1, what actually happens in the scene? Logistically, where do they go? What do they do? What pieces of information need to be conveyed? What feelings need to be hit? We're not talking about like a sentence per sentence. We're talking about 3-5 bullet points of what actually happens in that chapter. The second, where is the conflict? What obstacle must the character overcome? If they are not overcoming an obstacle, if there is no conflict, that chapter doesn't need to exist. Move on. Say that thing happened. Do something else. There needs to be some kind of conflict. It doesn't have to be a fight. It just needs to be some obstacle that the character cannot easily overcome. And finally, this is the key bit. This is the bit that this is how I get Erica to write. Like, without fail, this is the only single tool that I use to get Erica to write, which is, what makes you excited about this scene? What makes you want to write this scene first before you write any other scene? What's the best thing ever about this scene? Why does it just make your fingers itch? Figure that out during prep for every single chapter of the novel. So that when you finish writing the first chapter, you cannot wait to get to the second, because you cannot wait to get to the 8th, and so on and so forth. And you'll be amazed at how fast those 25 chapters fly. Erica, you wouldn't know anything about this, would you?
No. Precious.
The way I lure Erica in is with the suffering of characters. I say, Erica, I've thought of a new and delightful way to torture this character and make their lives miserable. And then her head pops up like, a rabbit in the whatever.
I'll raise you torture and I'll write you Orof.
I mean, there is that. We have devised some truly despicable characters, and one of the things that brings us together as friends is gleefully cackling at 2 a.m. in the morning after having written 10,000 words of nothing but pure, essentially torture porn.
So, for those of you who have not seen this before, Allegra and I met on a role-playing forum. And she shows up to visit me one summer, 2 summers ago. And her and a friend of ours...
never met in person.
Yep. Her and a friend of ours sat at my kitchen table for pretty much a week straight, except for when we were so tired we had to pass out, at which point we would somehow drag ourselves off to bed. I don't know how that happened. And when we woke up, we would end up at the kitchen table again, with the only breaks being bathroom and food. And usually the food was still at the kitchen table.
Yeah.
So it was just technology all over the table and madly writing down character ideas, where she gives me this idea to write this character with this terribly tragic, awful psychological backstory that traumatized one of the reviewers for approving characters.
It did?
And took like 3 rewrites to get it to where she would even let me do it. And I still got what I wanted because I'm that stubborn. I blame you.
Yes. And what she didn't say is that within 6 months, I had convinced her to also write the horrible character who had done all that damage to that character, and then come torture mine.
So when I said you will face the worst of yourself, that is actually what I had in mind. I was a little disturbed to find out I could write this person.
I was a little disturbed that I had, sat next to you with knives available after finding out that you could write this person. But we went down a bit of a rabbit hole there. To summarize, we're back at that point of find the thing in every single chapter that you cannot wait to write, whether it is, in our case, the suffering of a character, or, it could be the kissing scene. I love writing kissing scenes. It means that I'm like well on my way to writing heartbreak scenes.
Right.
What about you, Chance? How do you jazz yourself up to write?
I definitely enjoy torturing my characters. I like putting them into situations that are just gonna end badly for them, and I like writing things that have like cliffhangers. So it's like torture for me, the reader, and the character.
It is true. Setting yourself a cliffhanger when you don't know what will happen next is a great way to motivate yourself to figure out what's next and actually write it.
Yeah, and yeah, that's usually how I do it. I have like I try and aim for like a goal. There is this thing I'm going for. And I get excited about that thing. That's the goal I'm going to. That one right there. And I have to get there.
Yeah. So we've covered kind of the how to set up your plot, how to set up your characters. Let's talk a little bit just for a moment about setting and about the world building question, the big elephant in the room, which is world building. If you, like us, write fantasy and science fiction primarily, but if you write pretty much anything, there's going to be an element of world building in your novel prep. You have to figure out where it is, unless it's in a void, which is how I write my fast drafts, and my editor then comes back to me and asks me, why did you write this in a void? And I'm just like, no, actually, I tried to write it on a tropical island. Didn't that come through? And she's just like, no, honey, it's a void.
Well, we knew what we were talking about.
You don't need to know, right? That's not the point of books. When we said that fast drafts are horrible, we do mean that. You will write crap. Accept it. Love it. Just don't fight it. Fast drafting is all about how badly you can write something.
The better your crap is, the better the finished product, to be completely honest.
Yes. Try too hard to write something good and you will psych yourself out to fail. Be a trash fire.
Embrace the trash fire philosophy.
Yes, exactly. So like odorous. Anyways,
Justin brings up good point.
Let me. Where is it?
Chance found it.
There we go. Everything you write is crap. Editors are the ones that polish a turd into something good. Yes, they do. Bless editors. If there are editors watching this today, we appreciate you. We fear you. We cry when we hear you coming, but we love you.
We love you, and I will gladly feed you fudge.
Yes. However, I will still actually have an anxiety attack when you send me my manuscript, because I will be convinced that you have told me that the entire thing after I polished it is still the same garbage that I wrote. Which can happen. All right, so let's talk about setting. We were talking about world building. So world building for NaNoWriMo. Do as little of it as you can. Full stop.
You want to keep everything simple. Just maybe stick to very simple settings. Just a few, just very easy to recognize and describe areas. So you don't have to do a whole bunch of this is the world that they're surrounded with. You just have their perspective, their world that they're experiencing.
I'm going to give you a tip. If you're writing in a space station and you're a writer, you never leave your office. The space station is your office. Just tech out your office. You've got your description. If you're writing a post-apocalyptic zombie flick, you never leave your office. Your safe house that you're probably spending the majority of your time in the story is your office with some post-apocalyptic flavor.
Basically.
Just move where the desks are.
So in the latest book that I wrote, Bond of Thread, which is coming out early next year, Justin, who is here in the audience with us, we've decided to write an entire book which primarily takes place in one damp cave. Like, seriously, there's one little sequence in a village before they go back to the cave, but primarily it takes place with a village full of people taking refuge in one slightly small cave, and all of the drama that happens with fairies in this damp hole in the ground that a hobbit would definitely not live in. This let us write a 40,000 word novella in 2 weeks. We blasted through it because we had to do no world building. Now we're doing world building. Now during edits, we're sprinkling in a whole lot of lore, a whole lot of philosophy. We're getting that depth that we didn't have originally. But it all takes place in a cave because we didn't want to be bothered to world build. That is what will get you through. So, Chance, I know you tend to go down the world building rabbit hole. Any advice on not ending down that rabbit hole with all the rabbits?
So one of the things that I fall down is, because I write in fantasy, I have a lot of weird places or names for things, and I really like making them mean things that are deeper than just what's on the surface. But also I end up spending a lot of time doing that. I get bogged down by the details. So instead, if I'm writing, like the characters are going to an inn, I just call it the inn. It's the inn until I think of something more creative later.
Yeah, we do a lot of like XXX inn, so we can just do a massive find and replace. All
King
characters, until I know what their names are just like Bill and Mary. I don't care what they're called.
It doesn't matter right now. Those are not important unless they are your point of view character. It just
even then, unless their name has something to do with who they are as a character, it really doesn't matter. I wrote a post-apocalyptic zombie person once, and I didn't know her name was Penny until like 2 months after I started writing her.
Yeah. We did have a question from the audience, kind of perfectly timed. Do you have any tips on battling the world-building monster when it keeps kidnapping you every time you come up with a simple idea? And I do. And for this, you're going to take a blank piece of paper. And whatever idea you have, you're going to write it in the center. And you're going to give yourself 2 minutes on the clock. And you can write as much as you want on that blank piece of paper for 2 minutes, and that's it. That's all the world building you get. Drop it. Go away.
Idea grabs you, new piece of paper. Write it down. Write down all the things that go with it. Set timer for 2 minutes. When it goes off, you set that paper aside. You don't look at it again till later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to only go for a few bullet points on things. Just, okay, I have this amount of bullet points and that's it. That's all I have. I do not have more than this, and I have to work with this.
If you are interested in how world building really can be very effectively conveyed with very little, go look at our video on mise-en-scene. We did a lot of doing the world building in the background and then showing it in little pieces in the background of scenes. And this is very important. The audience doesn't care about your world building as much as you do. They genuinely do not. Can I go on for an hour about the specific fish pies in a fantasy city and why they are important and how I will torture my role-playing party to make them in a relay race? Yes. Do my readers want to know everything about these fish pies? Probably not.
The good fish pies, though.
Yes.
We're not going into pies, okay?
It was like 2 gaming sessions of pies.
It was wild.
It was very conflict-oriented pies. Anyhow, but yes, that is the way I've always gotten ideas out of my head, is this scattershot approach. And you know what? Oftentimes you get a ton of important ideas, and it boils down to the things that actually are at the core of an idea. My father is a sculptor, and he's going to be on the channel, I think, next Tuesday. He does this process where when he gets a big block of marble, he knocks away 30% at random, steps back, looks at the shape and tries to find a figure in the clouds, as it were. He's looking for something because his theory is if his mind recognizes it, it means it must already be proportional. It must already be there. The same thing is true of world building. Your initial snapshot, the thing that makes it into a concrete setting, means that it is actually a complete idea. Sure, it may not be a deep idea, it may not be a complex idea, or it may not be nuanced yet, and that can build with time, but try to capture that initial complete recognizable idea, because that is your iconic piece of world building that will actually capture a reader.
And this is where I differ from both of them, because I have to do that. So when it comes to my input on stories with Allegra, I tend to be very character driven. I don't view the world as separate from characters. The world to me is a character. It is often the antagonist to the characters. So I design the world as I would an antagonist. I figure out what are its major traits. What are its major cons? Those probably have more than positives. I figure out, instead of hair color, what's the weather? And I make a character profile for the world as an antagonist.
Which is a great way to put conflict in. Is probably one of the reasons why you fast draft so well. Because you don't go on those rabbit holes, you just let the world. But in a way, you are using the same concept, which is you're letting the world evolve from a core sense of self.
One of my things with characters is I like to have 6 main personality traits that would be considered pros, and 6 personality traits that would be considered negatives. And those are the core of my personalities when I design a character. Like, everything else is somewhat superfluous unless it's super important. Like in NaCl, we've got a disabled character. That's important to her. That's going to obviously be important. But her name really wasn't for a very long time.
Really
her
wasn't.
Hair color and her skin color and her facial features really weren't.
And the house she grew in on as a child, and the food she eats, and her preference in novels were not important.
But these main personality traits, these are the core of the character. These are important. Everything else is to support these main things. With the world, it's the same way. If I have the core concept of what the world is going to be, it's much easier to keep my world fairly consistent, even though I am a very chaotic word vomiter. So characters are about the only thing I keep really well organized, and therefore, if I'm doing a character-driven thing, I tend to be able to keep people's attention.
And you boil it down to a single core concept when possible, and then you just do the if this then that game. In Where Shadows Lie, I know that most of it takes place in this country called Lorin, that its entire power structure is based on the rivers. So anytime I have a world building question, I answer it with, can the rivers cause it? Is there a political or geographical or economic reason why we can tie it back to the rivers? Because almost everything is. And you'd be amazed at how many times that just solves my problem. How did this character get here? Well, came by riverboat.
The river.
It's very, very, once you have those main building blocks, you don't really have to build in the middle because there are strands connecting them and all you have to do is follow them. I want to change over a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about the NaNoWriMo community and what happens when you're actually writing. Because we've talked a little bit about how to prep, but there's also, the clock turns over, suddenly you're no longer in October, you actually have to write a novel. Which is, always the fun part. So first of all, let's talk about scheduling. It takes time to write 2,000 words. As an experienced writer can do that in, half an hour to an hour reasonably well. If you're Erica, you can do it in like 5 minutes. Well,
Not 5 minutes, it takes 15.
But if you're not Erica, it takes a couple hours to write. So it's very important as part of your prep to tell your family, to tell the people around you, to figure out when you're going to write, because the worst thing in the world is to prepare yourself for a task that is impossible, not because you didn't prepare correctly, not because you don't have a story to tell or are a good writer, but simply because life got in the way. And it sucks, and it can completely kill your motivation. So make sure that wherever it's within your power, put life in order so that you can actually write.
Or just lock the door.
I try to treat it like a part-time job, essentially. Like, all right, I'm gonna go to work for several hours. Please, I cannot be contacted. I'm working. That's phones over here and not actually being looked at. This is
Bring
work.
me food, bring me water, leave me alone.
That's why I have alarms.
Will actually freeze a whole bunch of meals so that I don't have to feed my family for like several days every week in November. Like, you pull something out of the freezer, warm it up. I'm writing. Bye. But
Much pizza.
Also, have buddies. Find some writing partners. The NaNoWriMo community online is incredible. They have regional chapters everywhere. And while this year, because we are in 2020, they're not doing in-person meetings, there's still going to be a ton of virtual get-togethers every single week, usually every day. There is something going on, and having that community is invaluable. But they are still a community of distant online people that you have no accountability to. So find a buddy.
Find a buddy who will go, did you do this? I want to know where you're at. I really want to know what the next part is.
Yes, that's what I was about to say. Read each other's stories every single day. Because there's nothing better to the ego of a writer and therefore to the productivity of a writer than someone being like, give me the next bit. Oh, I can't wait to read the next bit. Oh, I love this character. Oh, this is so good. And make sure that it's a person who actually will like your word vomit and won't get offended by like spelling errors and continuity errors, because they need to get it. Like getting someone who just won't care for what you're doing at all isn't actually going to be a productive work buddy.
That's fair.
Would you guys like to talk a little bit about like any tips and tricks you have on maintaining momentum?
Coffee. Or soda. Anything with caffeine, really.
Don't go back and edit. That is how I make backwards progress. I'm just gonna go fix some of these spelling errors and this grammar. It'll be fun. Why have I rewritten this entire chapter? And now all of that work that you already did, you've done it again without adding the same amount of words that you did the last time you did this. So just keep going. That's how I keep motivated. Is I cannot go back. I cannot look at what I've already written, even though I really, really I want to go and I want to read it and see how I did, and then I'll realize some of it's wrong or not good, and I'll fix it. No, don't do that. Nope. That's how we fall into this rabbit hole again.
The only exception is if you forgot a detail necessary to move forward. And then you have to seriously self-discipline yourself. I'm only going to find this thing.
Not even that. If you don't trust yourself to not read what you already wrote, just put it in brackets. Go back and put this thing in, dummy. I've done this so often. The other thing I can absolutely suggest is words are words in November. All words count in November. If you don't know what to write, break the first wall and talk through your problems in written prose. You'll probably solve your problems and you'll get words done. Just don't stop typing, even if you run out of ideas. And remember, if you're stuck, just say, what will make my character miserable? What do they want and how can I take it away from them? Ooh, I just gave them a piece of cake. You know what would be terrible right now? A gust
I sprinkle salt on the cake. The other really good way to keep this going forward is, I really want to get these two characters to kiss. How do I keep myself from doing that? Allegra.
Usually torture.
Kidnapping.
Yeah, that too. Kidnapping is super, super helpful. If you don't know what to do, just kidnap someone. It works like 9 times out of 10.
Force characters together that you were like, nah, these won't interact. But like when you're like, just, oh, why are we both here? I don't know. Let's find out.
In the short story that one of our co-authors, Justin, and I just wrote, we literally got to a point where we were just like, well, these characters need to stop fighting and start talking. How do we do it? Well, why don't we have the earth literally fall out from under them and plunge them into an underground river together? That'll get them working as a team in the frozen wilderness. And it did. Like, anytime you can force two people who do not want to be talking into a situation where they must talk for their own survival or sanity, always will give you drama.
Picture a bell ringing, D&D moment, the rocks fall.
Rocks fall, everyone dies.
Yes. Are things going too well? Rolling that one.
Kill a background character.
There we go. Erica, do you want to talk a little bit about how you make decisions about what happens to characters?
I mean, I can. Which one specifically are we talking about?
Rolling dice.
Oh, yes. So I am a huge... I dungeon master a lot of games. I play in a lot of games. I am a huge fan of tabletop RPGs. And so I have made it my goal in life, whenever I can't make up my mind, to roll dice. And one of the headcanon things that Allegra and I decided we were going to do was we were going to have these two very scary people have kids. Well, we couldn't figure out how many kids they were going to have. So I said, well, anywhere between 1 and 12, let's roll the dice. Turns out it's like 8. Okay. Well, now we have to figure out power scale for each of the kids. Do they even show up on the power scale, or do we have non-magical babies? Like 7 out of 8 are magical. Okay.
And this goes on and on and on until we basically have Superman by random chance. And we kept weighing the dice more and more in favor of not powerful. And we kept rolling like 99 on a 100-sided die. I've never seen so many large numbers on dice than that day.
We spawned Satan.
We did, essentially. And it will never get written because, oh dear God, I do not...
You just jinxed it. Now we're going to end up writing it.
No, but how do you think I get you to write? I jinx things and then they happen. Can't tell. Erica and I have been writing for a long time together. All right. So before we get out of here, because, well, I mean, we can keep going for as long as we want, but we will eventually have to leave you. So let's talk a little bit about your nano goals and how to set them. Because, again, success is candy. Candy can also be candy. When I wrote my first NaNoWriMo, I was a teenager and chocolate was all I could think about pretty much. So I gave myself a bag of M&Ms and I said every 100 words you get 1 M&M. And boy, did I want M&Ms. That's what I discovered about myself, that NaNoWriMo, that I could in fact write a novel and I really liked chocolate. But
I know one person in the comments is talking about writing a mech for Nano.
Do it. I challenge you. I want to read it December 1st on my desk. All your words on it. As many spelling errors as you want. It can literally just be you shouting in gibberish at the keyboard, but 50,000 words.
I am probably the person who will be most pained by terrible spelling. So I will live stream me reading it if you want to see pained expressions if the spelling is really bad, because it'll show up.
But set yourself realistic goals. I will, however, put a caveat to this. Set yourself realistic goals of finishing a project. That is one of the benefits of Nano, is simply to be able to, on December 1st, to close the page on something and say, well, this is done. Don't say, I'm going to make progress on a project, unless you're planning to finish it. You want a completed work because that is what will teach you the most. It will teach you about pacing. It will teach you about character arcs. It will teach you about world building. This is what NaNoWriMo is. It's an opportunity for you to learn and grow as a writer. It is not the time that you will probably write your bestseller world-changing novel. That will probably be later.
I mean, it might be.
It might be.
It could turn into one, but it won't be when you first write it.
No,
You should just say NaNoWriMo's your rough draft if you think you can turn it into something awesome.
the first 2 NaNoWriMos I did live on a hard drive. They will never be seen by anyone but my parents because I was a teenager and they insisted on reading at least some of it. And no, Erica, you may not have my angry response to Twilight where I make vampires who actually are aliens. Don't even.
Okay, but I'm interested.
Right?
No, bad. Will not happen. I might actually give you one of them. One of them is actually a super, super, super charming dystopia about a grandmother giving a little kid a bear that she had stuffed full of seeds, heirloom seeds, in a future where Monsanto had gone wild. And this girl takes this teddy bear all the way down the coast of California to plant a garden.
I love it.
Oh my God, I love it.
It's super charming. It's basically exactly the Lorax with very, very like loose sparkling of dystopia.
I love it.
But anyhow, find a goal that is achievable. Know what you are actually trying to achieve. Is it write a short story? Is it write a novella? Is it write a novel? Erica and I can sit down and say, okay, we're definitely writing a novel because we do this like every month. But
Not lately, but
not lately.
that's my fault.
I've been doing it every month lately. I added like 60,000 words into our last book. Like, never leave me alone in revising. That is the story, kids. Erica did the bad thing of leaving me alone with no word count cap.
Erica had health problems that chewed up all her spoons. And Allegra said, hey, what do you think of this? And I said, Allegra, sweetie, you run buck wild. I'm trying to live.
Yes. So,
and she
yeah.
did. Oh, she did.
It is 60,000 words longer than what we wrote in our fast draft. But again, get something that you feel comfortable but challenged. Goal, comfort but challenge. Do something that will teach you something new. And set realistic goals for what will happen if you fail.
And keep in mind, even if you fail, and it's possible, life happens, it's a learning experience. If you are alive, you won. If you've showered any time in the last 2 weeks when doing NaNoWriMo, you won.
Did you write one word more than you would have? You won.
You won. This is a really difficult challenge. Like people around the world struggle with this. Like that's just everyone has some trouble, no matter how experienced they are. 50K in 30 days is hard.
Yeah.
And even seasoned writers don't succeed every year. People who've succeeded every year they've tried before, maybe they just had a bad year, and it's okay.
Honest, I have succeeded in writing a novel more than 50,000 words in a month, dozens of times. I have succeeded to do NaNoWriMo in November 3 times.
I think I'm the same.
So all the jokes we crack about how fast Allegra and I write, that being said, we have had stretches of weeks where it just cannot happen. Not that we don't want to, just cannot happen for one reason or another. So if you don't make it, don't beat yourself up.
It's okay.
Have a plan if you succeed, which should be put the novel away for at least a month. Let it marinate in its own trashy juices. Pick it back up at its most awful. In about a month, 6 months, a year, however long it takes for you to get it out of your system. Then edit it, do all the things you want to do. Rewrite it from scratch is my suggestion. But, you know.
Coffee.
More coffee.
And Tylenol. You're going to need coffee and Tylenol when you first read your draft again.
Yeah.
And possibly a vomit bag.
I usually have a computer read it to me, so it's in a dispassionate voice that can't, like, groan. at the horrible English grammar. But also have a plan if you fail. Have a plan for whether this is a story that you're just writing for the practice for NaNoWriMo, or this is something that you really want to see written. If you got a third of the way in November, say to yourself, well, I'm not going to stop trying to get 1,600 words, 2,000 words a day until I finish it. That's valid. Letting November be your start is great. Another thing I would strongly suggest is get practice doing those daily word counts. Start in October. As you're building your characters, write a prequel. Write some shorts. Write some flash fiction. Get in their heads. Write them at some of the hardest. Yes. Write in October, not on this project, but in things that potentially are tangential to this project, things that will teach you the voice and the pacing and the characters and the places that you're going to be exploring, because it will only help you. The more in tune you are with how fast you are as a writer and how efficient you are, the better.
Write character maps, and you don't even have to make people up. Write a character map for your best friend. What do you think the character map of your best friend is? Maybe don't show your best friend this character
Erica,
map.
I feel like we need to do this to each other.
We'll talk about that. This may be a thing you do while drinking when everything can be forgiven. And or write character maps for your enemies. It's therapeutic.
It is. Oh,
I didn't suggest that. That was in my head. Like, writing doesn't just mean write a story. Yeah. For the purposes of practicing in October, writing could literally just be figuring out what is the best way for me to plan characters, or figuring out what is the best way for me to plan world building, and finding your method for it in October versus trying to figure it out in November.
Exactly. And in November, on November 1st, when you're all like, well, I feel so alone and I can't do it, think about us. Me and Erica in particular, who, if we sign a blood pact and actually decide to carry through with the idea that we have, are going to be live on this channel writing an entire novel.
Nice.
Completely open, so that you can see our trash fire word vomit, word for word.
We will probably be in pajamas.
We will definitely be drinking coffee, spiked with a alarming amount of booze.
Well, in her case. I can only take like a fingerful of booze.
Yeah, that is an alarming amount for me. I'm a very lightweight.
And then, Mountain Dew cans galore. Because I alternate my coffee and my Mountain Dew. And yeah, it will get goofy. There might be tears for numerous reasons.
We will be writing a fairy romance in our upcoming series. And we have written this twice already. We wrote it once as a role play on a website, once as a role play / very, very bad 0 draft that got chopped into 3, completely revamped the plot to the point where it's almost unrecognizable. We'll basically have to start from scratch and are writing it one more time.
Here we go again.
Fortunately, they're characters we absolutely love because they absolutely hate each other, and both of them want exactly what the other person doesn't want and need it to the core of their beings. So character-driven, conflict-driven galore.
We're awful. We are terrible people.
Again, if you haven't figured it out from the creepy backlit evil villain lair that I'm living in, we're here for the torture and the pain. Do not enter
Speaking
here
of,
if you are happy.
There will be trigger warnings on the channel that day.
Yes. If we get into anything nasty. Oh, we lost a chance!
We did.
Well, I guess we kidnapped him, as previously mentioned. Our plan finally came to fruition, Erica. Funny how we must have time traveled, considering we only decided to do this a second ago. Ah, you're back.
Hi.
We were discussing
Sorry.
how we kidnapped you.
Nope. Just my internet just held me hostage for a moment.
Well, unless there are any questions from the audience that we haven't answered yet, we're probably going to start wrapping up here. So, Chance, want to tell us all about what you are starting to think about doing for Nano and about your work and you and where we can find you.
Sure thing. So this NaNoWriMo, I'm going to be writing something kind of light because the world is kind of on fire out there, so it's not going to be on fire in here. It is going to be a post-apocalyptic fantasy, but it's going to lean really heavy into the fantasy. The post-apocalyptic portion is kind of like a background theme. But it's going to be it's going to have 2 point-of-view characters, and it's going to be it's a boy's kiss story. Where it's like a coming of age. They're gonna go and like travel together and figure out that they have feelings. It's gross and amazing. So I'm looking forward to it.
Sweet,
yeah,
I
like how Team Torture Squad just said, boys kiss, and we're both like, oh, that's all we want in life.
Yep, it's boys kiss and mutants and magic.
Oh damn!
Yeah, you've sold me.
I've got a great combination going, so I'm very excited about it. These are still in like the worlds that I write in general for my website, which is Synthesized Productions. But these are characters I haven't really written very much about, and what I have written is nowhere near what I'm going to be writing. I don't even know this portion of their lives. I'm just making it up as I go.
Which sounds just about ideal.
Welcome to my world.
I'm pretty excited about that. I'm working on a whole bunch of different projects in the background. I'm updating my website for the rest of the month. And that will be done by the beginning of October. So then I can start focusing on doing more of the writing and producing videos. So those will go up on my YouTube channel and everything as well.
Fantastic. And Erica.
Well, clearly I'm going to be in a blood pact with Allegra to write Kia and Willow. And that's all you guys are getting out of me as far as like who they are. It's Kia and Willow, and you will know them starting November 1st, and hopefully you will love and loathe them as much as I do.
Yeah, I feel like based on what we do to them, it's mostly loathing, but we would say it's actually love.
Oh, it's definitely love. However, that being said, trigger warning, guys, there is pain, drugs, pain, more pain.
Pain, lots and lots of pain.
Lots of pain.
Yeah, this is a romance, folks. It has a happily ever after.
It does.
Ever, like after, like way after, maybe they're happy. No.
But it is it's in a very dark situation. So like, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, Erica, do you want to tell them a little bit about what we have going on elsewhere, as in the awesome book we have out?
So, NaCl Eye of the Storm released on September 13th, I believe it was. And sorry for my fogginess on dates. I'm terrible at them.
What is time?
It's terrible. I hate time. It is a genre-defying book. Like, the closest we can come to describing this is it is an arcane punk pirate heist. But I would argue it's got theft, but it's not a heist.
Yeah.
It's arcane punk because it's got magic and tech. And it's got pirates, but not all of the characters are pirates.
Terrorism book?
It's also kind of an eco-terrorism book. The best way to describe this is it's a book about eating the rich.
Yes, it is a book essentially about pirates eating the rich.
We've been talking a lot about cake tonight, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is no cake in the book, weirdly enough.
There is cake in the book, in the Mo scene. The feast that he stole.
Well, yeah, but we never specifically said there's cake at the table.
Well, now you have to.
I did. You see how we know our own books. We're so good at this. NaCl Eye of the Storm is the first book that Erica and I wrote together and was fast drafted in 6 weeks. It was 120,000 words at the end of our fast draft, which meant that we did way over Nano's word count. And that was Erica's book 1. So she can do it. I know you can do it. And it will be just as much trash fire, but we love our trash fire. We toast marshmallows in it. This is what NaNoWriMo is for. So if you have liked our lovely discussion tonight, please like, subscribe, and share. It helps the algorithms find more people for us to educate and torture.
No, seriously, rainbows, loves, and hugs.
That's all there is. Said that. Mom, I am a kid-friendly channel.
Definitely.
So much. All right. As Erica said, NaCl Eye of the Storm is available on Amazon, as is Where Shadows Lie, where there is this river-obsessed country. You should check both of them out. They are awesome. If you check them out, you should let us know how you like them, because we are writers, and they were trash fire once, and we remember when they were trash fire and aren't convinced they're still not. So yes, please tell us, especially if they are, so we can fix it.
And if they are, please hold nothing back. We also look forward to that.
Yes, give us the hate mail. Anyways, NaNoWriMo is in a little over a month. Get your ideas ready. Get your outlines done. Build your proactive characters. And come back here on November 1st when Erica and I commit to torturing ourselves for your entertainment. Good night.
Good night, folks.